Sup, I'm Alex. It's like 2 a.m. This video isn't scripted because I'm mad. So there was this tweet. I'm just gonna read it for you before I provide the context. From Kit Connor. Back for a minute. I'm bi. Congrats for forcing an 18-year-old to out himself. I think some of you missed the point of the show. Bye. So, Kit Connor is an actor in the Netflix show Heartstopper, which is based on a webcomic by... I'm actually blanking on their name right now, so it's not important. I can insert it if that's the point. Like I said, not scripted. And he was just forced, or sort of bullied into coming out publicly on his Twitter because he was being accused of queerbaiting. Now, to the best of my understanding, these accusations were due to him engaging in queer media and being a part of queer media, playing a queer character, but not being out as anything in particular. And he was being accused of queerbaiting. Now, this is an issue that I've seen, not just with Kit Connor. This video is not about Kit Connor. This video is about how you people need to stop using terms that you do not understand, right? So Kit Connor's situation is not... The details aren't important. I've seen this before. This has been an issue that I've been thinking about previously. I've seen this with Harry Styles. I've seen it with random K-pop stars, right? I've seen the issue. It pops up. Where people, celebrities, do things that are perceived in some way as queer. And this can range from, calling their friends their girlfriends, or maybe hinting that they might like the same gender, or partaking in queer culture, which can be anything from, established queer culture or playing queer roles to wearing a dress as a man, right? Breaking gender roles. And you take all of these things, and you take a person, a celebrity, who is not openly queer, who's doing any one of these things. And what happens is that people see these things and they go, that stuff seems queer, but this person is not, to my knowledge, queer. So they're queerbaiting. And that's just simply not what queerbaiting is. So, I suppose my issue with this is that you all have a fundamental misunderstanding of what queerbaiting is, who can do it, in what context, and why it's bad, right? And this has been bothering me, and this pushed me over the edge, because these are the consequences that I've been worried about, right? So, what is queerbaiting? Queerbaiting, to my understanding, is a term that popped up in fandom communities. Now, I didn't fact check that, because like I said, unscripted, 2 a.m. But that is my understanding of it. Regardless, it popped up in discussion of media, right? And so queerbaiting is this idea that, or this sort of, it describes this pattern that can be noticed in certain media where creators will notice that they have an audience who are looking for queer content, who are picking up on queer subtext, who are reading that into the text, or following the show for that sort of thing. So they'll notice like shippers or, queer headcanons, and they will start deliberately playing to that audience without any intention of ever actually acting anything out, ever actually canonizing anything, right? So essentially, you take your Destiels, right? Destiel is a great example of this, actually, and now I could talk for a long time about Destiel, which I'm not going to do, but essentially, it's a very explicit example of this, where you see people start shipping these characters, they start headcanoning these characters as queer, and the writers notice, and so they start putting in queer subtext, but they have no intention of making Destiel canon. Now, the fact that Destiel is sort of semi-canon is not relevant here, because this was going on for years without any intention of ever making it canon. You'd have writers writing in these incredibly queer-coded scenes, this incredibly homoerotic subtext, these moments that would definitely be hinting that Destiel, could become canon, these sort of will they, won't they type scenes, right? They'd have other characters explicitly make fun of Cass and Dean and say things like, oh, the one in the front trench coat was in love with you, or, they'd have characters in the show hint at Destiel or imply that the relationship seemed romantic, and they'd have these moments between them, right? All of this obviously fueling the shippers very deliberately. Meanwhile, at the same time, the actors and the writers would vehemently just disapprove of the shippers, and at cons and stuff like that, shippers would get laughed out and harassed and told to stop bringing up that bullshit to the writers, even though they were obviously deliberately putting in there, and they would get made fun of in the show as well. Like, they had the Destiel thing come up in the fan fiction episode, and it was made fun of, and like, as far as fandom related episodes of Supernatural go, that one is on the nicer side, because they are just really cool to our fans, but they would mock these ideas, not just on the show, but, in real life, all the while continuing to write that subtext in, and that is queerbaiting. They would use it in the marketing, they would use it in the show, and they would try to draw in this audience because they knew that this audience existed without any intention of delivering anything to them. So it's a marketing idea, right? You're trying to draw in an audience without alienating a conservative audience, because that's why they don't just make it canon, because they don't actually want gay people on their show, because that could turn off the homophobes, and you gotta also cater to the homophobes, and also, if you're a bit homophobic and you don't want your lead character to be gay, this is a great way to draw in all those fangirls and all those shippers and all those queers and their queer little money without actually having to do anything for them. And so that's queerbaiting, essentially. And this is, like I said, it's an actual observable pattern in media, especially media with a large fandom sort of interaction. And when it becomes queerbaiting is not the same as queer subtext. Queer subtext is, it's subtext that's queer. It's when you queer code something. It's when you use aspects of queer culture and queer symbolism to hint that something might be queer without ever explicitly confirming it, which is not in itself inherently queerbaiting, because queer representation doesn't have to be explicit and canon to be fine. Like, you can write things sexually. That's not an issue in and of itself. The issue is with the marketing and with the sort of preying on a specific audience that you have no respect for. And so that's queerbaiting, right? Queerbaiting, as you might be noticing in this definition, has nothing to do with the real life people involved. Like, it's a media thing, right? And you've seen this, recently I've seen this trend of people starting to accuse celebrities and YouTubers and actors and whatever of queerbaiting for doing things that seem queer to them without being out of the closet, which is absolutely unwarranted as a criticism. Hey, can we take Harry Styles as an example, right? Harry Styles is going to criticize for this because he does gender non-conforming things, and he's had some lyrics that are vaguely hinting at queer stuff, and he acts he's in that gay movie, and he got criticism for his comments about gay lovemaking scenes, which, that certainly was an interesting comment, but the problem with that comment was not if Harry Styles is gay or not. Like, the problem with that comment wasn't Harry Styles said this and he's straight. The problem was that was a weird fucking comment to make, right? I'm not explaining the context at all. Harry Styles made a comment about how gay sex scenes in media aren't like loving enough, and how they're just like two guys going at it, and he got criticized for speaking about gay sex scenes when he's straight. I feel like the issue isn't just whether he's gay or not. I feel like the issue is also just this weird thing to say. That's not the point. The point is that he's gotten criticized for using queer culture or for appropriating queer culture because he presents himself in a sort of ambiguous way. He doesn't really say whether he's straight or not, and he doesn't really put a label on himself, but he continues to use these gender non-conforming things in his appearance. He uses like in gender non-conforming clothes, he wears dresses, he presents in a sort of ambiguous way. And I would just like to ask all of you, why the fuck you're trying to gatekeep these things? Since when do you have to be queer to not conform to gender roles? I thought that we were trying to teach people that there isn't a way to look queer or to act gay beyond, doing homosexual acts. Like, I thought that we were trying to break that stereotype and open up gender expression for everyone, so I don't understand why suddenly you have to be a certified homosexual to wear a dress on a Vogue cover. Like, aren't we supposed to be inclusive? Is that not the whole deal? it's wild to me, like, that's not, these things are not exclusive to queer people. And he should not have to come out as anything to do them. And then there's this idea of, people being vague about their sexuality, and I don't have a concrete example for this. I mean, I could use hairstyles again, but I'm not that, I don't, like, follow hairstyles that intently, so I don't want to, like, misquote anything or whatever. But it's just, I've seen this criticism with several people as well, of them not answering questions about their sexuality or dodging them and saying things that allude to them being gay, but then not actually coming out as gay, or saying things that, make it sound like they might be queer and then not actually coming out as queer. And I would just like to ask you, since when the fuck is that your business, Are people not allowed to be closeted? Are people not allowed to not tell you the details of their love life? If you cared about queer people, you would care about their integrity and, like, their ability to choose when they come out and how much they come out and to which extent they tell you about these things. Claiming, like, that you're doing this out of some sort of care for queer people, claiming that you're trying to protect their audiences from getting queer-baited is ridiculous, because these people have a right to not come out any more than they want to. They don't have to be any more specific than they want to. And this is a ridiculous thing to crave from people. And I've seen, like, if someone wants to be vague about their sexuality, they have every right to be as vague as they want. They don't have to answer a question ever. They don't have to. They can do whatever they want, and they can just not tell you what their sexuality is, because it is none of your business unless you are sleeping with them. You don't need to know who they're into. It's none of your business. And even if you are sleeping with them, you don't need to know who they're into apart from, you, right? Like, it's not your business. That's their business. And they choose how much of that they want to share with the public, you ass. And then there's the thing with actors, right? Apparently there's this discourse that not just actors, actually creators, right? There's this idea that in order to create queer content, you have to be queer. Which, hey, I'm queer, and I think you're fucking wrong. I think that's a stupid idea. People tend to do this, right? And this is a discussion that comes originally from, like, a good place, right? Of you shouldn't speak over others' experiences. So, people have been saying that if you're writing about a certain culture, then you should be a member of that culture because you don't want to be misrepresenting it, which is absolutely a perspective that I can understand. However, do we have to circle back to the thing where nobody ever owes you an explanation about how queer they are or are not? Like, absolutely, I don't think cishet people should speak over queer people, but people have the right to be closeted, and they have the right to make art about queerness and partake in art about queerness. Also, straight people, shockingly, have the right to write about gay people sometimes. Like, we, as queer people, are not this alien species that is impossible for a straight person to understand. Like, no, they cannot speak over our experiences or understand them better than we can, but a straight person is perfectly capable of doing research and writing a gay character. A straight person is perfectly capable of doing research and acting a gay role, Like, I don't think you have to be gay to play gay on TV, because being gay is something that comes across in your actions and your feelings, and, well, I mean, it's not like you have to like all the things that your character likes to play them accurately, Obviously, there are situations where your identity should match the thing you're playing, like, obviously, race, right? You're not going to cast a white person and have them do blackface to act like a black person, because that's absolutely offensive, right? That's racist, and that's actively stealing roles from black actors as well. And like with autism as well, you should cast autistic actors, because it's better to have someone who just is autistic, acting autistic, than to have someone imitate autistic, like, mannerisms and whatever, right? It's not the same with gay people, because people act out relationships that are not actually in all the time. People act out relationship situations that they're not actually in all of the time. Are you going to start saying that you can't play a poor person unless you're poor? Are you going to start saying that you can't play someone who has PTSD unless you don't? Like, obviously you need people who know what they're talking about to, supervise the script and to look into it, and you have, sensitivity readers and stuff like that, but, like, when you're acting, the whole point is that you're pretending to have an experience that isn't real. So this idea that queer actors should be the only ones to play queer characters, and I'm not talking about trans people here. Trans people absolutely should get to play trans characters. I'm talking about queer as in gay, bi, pan, ace, all of those things, right? When you act like you have to be gay to play those roles, I feel like that's ridiculous. You're just creating the situation where an actor who wants to play a gay role and is gay has to out themselves, right? I think it's great when these roles do go to queer people. Like, I think it's wonderful to see queer people creating queer art, but you do not have to be queer to partake in queer art. You do not have to be gay to play a gay person, right? And when you crave that of people, when you say you have to be queer to write about queer people, you're just forcing people to out themselves. You should not start speculating about people's identities because they want to make art about queer people. If you want representation, you're gonna have to accept that you're gonna have to take representation from people who do not want to come out, or people who can't come out, or people who don't think that's any of your fucking business, or straight people. Straight people should also be allowed to write about queer people. Not speak over us, but they should be allowed to write about us. You cannot criticize someone for playing a queer character when they are not queer, or writing about queer people when they are not queer, because you don't know that, and you can't force them to come out, because coming out is an incredibly personal decision. And it's even more stupid. I use the word stupid a lot, I don't want to do that, but it's even worse to accuse them of queerbaiting, because that just is not what queerbaiting means. Like, first of all, it's just straight up not an issue for an actor who isn't bisexual to play a bisexual character. Like, I'm bisexual, and I don't give a shit. It's acting. You're pretending. But also, if they do that, they're not queerbaiting, because that's a real ass person, and queerbaiting is a term that describes a marketing tactic in media. It's not about real people, their real lives, their real identities. It is about people and the choices they're making when writing to draw in an audience. A real person never has to come out if they do not want to come out. You should never, for any reason, under any circumstances, be forcing people to come out when they are not ready, when they do not want to, because it is an incredibly personal decision, and you do not know their life, you do not know their circumstances, you don't know where they are in their self-discovery journey, where they are in their self-acceptance journey, you don't know what their family life is like, you don't know what their situation is like, or why they might not want to, or be able to, come out, and it's none of your fucking business. And when you accuse people of queerbaiting because they're not being clear about their sexuality, you are demanding that they give you a part of themselves, part of their personal lives. They give you access to that, whether or not they want to, because you think that you're entitled to it, and you are not entitled to it. Public figures are people, and they have the right to a certain level of privacy. They have chosen to make themselves public, this is true, but their private lives are still theirs. Their identity is still theirs, and it is their business if they share that with you or not. They are people, and they are owed a certain level of respect that all the rest of us are owed. Any celebrity has just as much of a right as I do to not tell you what their sexuality is, to not tell you about their identity, because it is theirs, and it is personal, and it can have consequences, and there are reasons why people are closeted, and they range from, them maybe being put in actual danger, at actual risk if they come out, to them just not wanting to because it's just none of your business. And any reason that someone doesn't want to come out is valid, and their business, and you should mind your fucking own. Queerbaiting is a marketing tactic, and it is about media, and it is not something that a real person can do about their real identity. It just isn't. You cannot accuse someone of queerbaiting for not telling you whether they're or not. I am a broken record at this point, but I just need to hammer home into your thick fucking skulls that a real person's identity is not a matter of queerbaiting. People have every right to be as big as they want. And now you can start talking about because I briefly mentioned K-pop earlier, you could start talking about fan service, or you could start talking about clickbait, right? That is not what this is about. And that in itself is dubious, but that's a different conversation, because this is about the idea that someone owes you any level of information about themselves that they do not. You don't know who's queer and who isn't, unless they choose to tell you. And if they're choosing not to tell you, it is not your fucking business to go around accusing them of baiting you by withholding that information. That information is theirs, and you need to mind your own fucking business. Kid Connor was not ready to come out. He didn't want to. He clearly is upset by this. And he didn't do anything to warrant you all bullying him into it simply by playing a queer character, right? He put himself in a context where he was playing a queer character, where he was being involved in a queer context as an actor. And his personal life has absolutely fuck all to do with that. So the fact that he now has had to come out, despite not wanting to, and by his own accord not being ready, is disrespectful as hell from all of you. And if any of you who speculated on this guy's identity or accused him of queerbaiting are watching this right now, I hope you feel ashamed. I hope you feel bad. Listen, I am not a perfect person. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm better than all of you, and I've never done anything problematic in my life. But if you were part of forcing this guy to come out before he was ready, this teenager, then I do hope you feel bad. I do. Not like permanently, but I hope that right now you're realizing that you were wrong. Because that wasn't any of your business. That was not your place. Before you go on the internet and accuse someone of queerbaiting, I feel like you should look up what it actually means. Because this is the consequences. These are the consequences of using the term inappropriately, of applying it to real people and their real identities. This 18-year-old was forced to come out against his will, very publicly, before he was ready, because some of you couldn't mind your fucking business. Take the term queerbaiting out of your mouth until you've learned what it fucking means.